Okay, so let's begin. The best of both worlds, what we're talking about is there are not that many countries or economies in which the economy is considered to be an industrialized one, and the market is emerging. So this is an industrialized economy that works, and an emerging capital market. And when we talk about the best of both worlds, what we mean is that the standard of living is higher than you'd find in a lot of the OECD countries, and the capital market has returns on equity and fixed income, which you'll find in emerging markets. Okay, and the second bullet goes to the macroeconomic policy indicators, and this is the next slide, which shows you, some of them Gil showed, but for instance, the current account, we have a surplus. We have a current account surplus of about 4% GDP, which is one of the reasons why the shekel has been so strong in recent years. The US, for comparison's sake, has a deficit of about 5% GDP, which is only one of the reasons why the dollar has been so weak. Inflation rate, well, yeah, we have currently, the inflation rate is about 3.5% in Israel. It's going to go down to 2% by the end of this year. The U.S. has an inflation rate of about 4.5%. Budget deficit, that's not a mistake. In 2007, the budget deficit was zero. The U.S., another macroeconomic indicator in which the States has a problem with. So no problem with the budget deficit. It's going to be about 2% this year. And as Gil said, the government debt, that's the only macroeconomic indicator that we still have a major problem with. Currently, it's about 80% of GDP. It has to go down to 60%. We're on the right track, as you can see. So really, this is the only one that we still have to go ways to go. It's going to take us, well, it's going to take us years, but we're still working on it. So if we move forward, what we see is, we're celebrating this year 60 years. Okay, 60 years for Israel, the state of Israel. The Israeli economy is only 23 years old. That's it. That's since the 1985 stabilization program. Before that, we had an inflation rate of 450%. We had a public debt of 180% of GDP. So, this was a country back in 1984 on the brink of a major financial meltdown. And since 2004, Israel's capital market has been born. And you might ask, wow, is it that dramatic? Is it as dramatic as the other two? And the answer, of course, is, no, are you kidding me? It's not. But yeah, this is very dramatic for the financial market specifically, if that's where you work. So when we look at what happened since 2003, I take it into two sections, and the first one is the reforms in fiscal policy since 2003, and specifically after 2004, 5, and 6. And yeah, this has been a major debate in Israel, and all of the speakers have, since last evening until today, every speaker notes what happened to this very egalitarian economy and the increase in the inequality in income distribution, which is a major problem for Israel. I'm not going to talk a lot about this. I'm sure Professor and Knesset member Braverman will talk about this a lot over lunch. But the thing is, do remember, because this is something that everybody's been talking about, and everybody is talking about this in Israel in the past years, the inequality in income distribution in Israel is not as high as it is in the States. I mean, when you listen to the speakers, you'd think that this was some sort of a anomaly in the whole of the world, but it's not. The situation in Israel has been, the inequality has increased, but it's not as high as it is in the States. And maybe the question is, why do we care as much? I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I think maybe that's the interesting question. So this is what happened with the fiscal reforms and then the capital market reforms, and this is about a third of the full list. Major reforms, one after the other, within 2-3 years, and this has, this is the former government making reforms in capital markets that most governments, including most of Israel's governments in the past, have done over decades. And this is all in the space of about 3 years. So the result, as you can see, the result later is, for instance, if you look at IPOs, at the amount raised, at capital raised in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, if you look at this graph, it looks like we're talking about two totally different economies, two totally different capital markets. And in a sense, that's what I'm trying to say. It's a totally different capital market since 2004. Some of it is due to headwinds. Some of it is due to the fact that since 2004, growth in all of the economies, specifically in the States, the EU, but in all of the world, we have had a global major economic boom as we did in Israel. So part of it is tailwinds, but another part is definitely it's homemade, and it's homemade through the capital market reforms. And if we look at what's been going on, and by the way, I've not done it's on purpose. I've began this slide with 2001, 2002 with the minus 23.5% annual return on equities in Israel. That's on purpose, because this is following the 2000 NASDAQ bubble. And by the way, there was no other country in the world which was as positively affected by the NASDAQ bubble as Israel was. I'm not even sure the state of New York was as positively affected by the NASDAQ bubble as Israel was. But there was no other country that was as negatively affected by the bursting of that bubble in late 2000 as Israel was. That's the way it goes. Israel is a major high-tech country. Iran and Richard said that in the beginning. After the U.S., the second country with the largest number of listed companies on NASDAQ is Israel. So, including the minus 23% on average for 2001-2, what you can see is on average, since 2001, the annual return on equity in Israel was 11%. By the way, that's slightly lower than our long-term average. So if you look at this, the figure since 1990 till 2007, it's going to be slightly higher than 11% on average annually. And on fixed income, on a 10-year government Israeli bond, the return was an average 8.5%, which is a lot. And you can see what happened to the market cap in Israel. It increased about fourfold within 7 years, and the daily turnover about eightfold within 7 years. So that's the story. The bonuses aren't listed, but yeah, they're not too shabby. Okay.